The ICU smelled like bleach and rain, the kind of sterile air that feels heavy in your lungs. I had been there for hours, holding my brother's hand, whispering stories he couldn't hear. The machines hummed beside him, steady but fragile. When a nurse told me to take a break, I stepped into the hallway to call our relatives, to tell them there was hope. I walked past the nurse's station, phone in my hand, and then I heard it. My parents' voices.
Low.
Urgent. Speaking to the doctor. "We don't want the surgery," my father said. My mother's tone was even colder. "It's too expensive. And honestly, he's suffered enough. Just keep him comfortable." I stopped mid-step. The air in my chest turned to ice. Too expensive? Suffered enough? We were talking about my brother, my only brother. The boy who once defended me from bullies with nothing but a glare, who carried my backpack home when I sprained my ankle. And now his life was being weighed against a bill? I stayed hidden behind the corner, my hands trembling around my phone. The doctor's voice was careful. "Without the surgery, he won't survive more than a few days." "Are you certain?" My parents didn't hesitate. "We're certain." The words sliced through me. I wanted to storm and scream, demand they explain themselves. But instead, I stood there frozen. My mind ran in jagged loops. Why?
How could they?
What kind of parents choose money over their own son's life? When they finally walked past, they didn't notice me. My mother's eyes were dry. My father's hand was in his coat pocket, like he was already moving on. I leaned against the wall, my breath uneven. The world around me felt quieter than it should have been. I thought of my brother lying in that room, unaware that the two people who gave him life had just signed his death sentence. And in that silence, one truth hit me harder than the beeping of those monitors. If I didn't do something, he was already gone. What happens when the people you trust to protect family become the ones you have to protect them from? I didn't go back into his room right away. If I saw his face now, I'd break. And I couldn't afford to break, not when the two people who should have been fighting for him had already surrendered. Instead, I slipped into the stairwell, sat on the cold concrete step, and started scrolling through my contacts. There had to be a way. Someone who could help. Someone who wouldn't ask for permission from them. I called Aunt Valerie first. She lived 2 states away, but had always been the kind of woman who cut through nonsense with a single sentence. "I'm listening," she said after I told her everything in a rush, my voice shaking. She didn't even pause. "Get the consent forms. If your brother named you as next of kin or gave you power of attorney, you can override them. Even if he didn't, there are ways." My hands tingled with adrenaline. "But they'll know." "Good," she interrupted. "Let them know you're not going to watch him die." I hung up and wiped my face. No more hiding in corners. No more freezing in place. I marched to the nurse's station, found the doctor they'd just spoken to, and said, "I'm his sister. I want to talk about that surgery." He looked at me carefully, his eyes flicking toward the hallway where my parents had disappeared. "They made their wishes clear," he said softly. I leaned forward. "Their wishes aren't his. And if you check his file, you'll see he wrote my name under emergency contacts. Not theirs." The doctor hesitated, then stood. "Follow me." Inside his office, he pulled up the records. My name was there, bold on the screen. And just like that, the decision shifted. Papers were printed. A pen was placed in my hand. My signature felt heavier than any document I'd ever signed, but my hand didn't shake. I was done letting silence decide his fate. When I walked back into my brother's room, the hum of the machines felt different. The surgery was scheduled. He had a chance now. But I also knew this. When my parents found out, the real fight would begin. I didn't have to wait long for the storm. By the time I returned from grabbing a coffee in the hospital cafeteria, they were there, standing outside my brother's room, voices sharp enough to slice through the corridor noise. My step faltered, but I didn't slow. "What did you do?" My mother's voice was low, but her eyes were fire. My father didn't bother with quiet. "We told the doctor no. No surgery. You had no right to change that." I glanced through the glass at my brother, still unconscious, still hooked to tubes and monitors, and felt something inside me snap. I had every right. "You gave up on him." "I didn't." My father stepped closer, the smell of his cologne clinging like an old memory. You think you're some kind of hero? You have no idea what this will cost. I met his stare without blinking. If it costs every dime I have, I'll still sleep at night knowing I didn't let him die because of a bank balance. People were watching now, nurses at the desk, visitors passing by. My mother's lips tightened into a practiced smile for the audience, but her whisper to me was venom. You'll regret this. Don't expect our help when it all falls apart. I leaned in, just enough that she could hear me, but the others couldn't. I don't need your help. I just need my brother alive. She pulled back like I'd slapped her. My father's jaw tightened, but for the first time in hours, he didn't have an answer. The doctor appeared then, holding a clipboard. We'll prep him for surgery in 20 minutes. His tone was steady, but his eyes flicked between us, reading the tension like a headline. My parents didn't say another word. They turned and walked down the hall, shoulders stiff. I went back into my brother's room, sat beside him, and took his hand again. My thumb brushed over the foretape. You're going to make it, I whispered. Even if I have to fight everyone to get you there. The hours of the surgery felt endless. Every tick of the clock above the waiting room door was another reminder that this was a fight I hadn't planned for, but one I refused to lose. I sat alone in a corner chair, coffee long cold, fingers twisting the hospital band around my wrist. My parents didn't sit with me. They paced on the far side of the room, whispering in clipped tones, shooting glances my way like I was the problem here. When the surgeon finally came out, his mask pulled down, I stood so fast my knees cracked.
He made it, he said.
It'll be a long recovery, but the surgery was a success. The relief was instant, dizzying. I wanted to laugh, cry, collapse all at once. But then I saw my parents' faces, tight, unreadable. No joy, no gratitude, just calculation. The surgeon moved on, leaving us in the awkward space between victory and whatever this was. My mother approached first, her voice syrupy for the people in earshot. Well, I guess we'll see how this turns out. I stared at her. He's alive. That's how this turns out. She gave me a small, sharp smile and walked away. My father lingered, lowering his voice. You don't understand. You think you saved him, but all you've done is delay what's coming. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just about money. This was about control. About whatever future they'd already mapped without him in it. And for the first time, I wondered if they had wanted him gone for a reason far darker than I'd imagined. When I went to see my brother in recovery, he was pale but breathing steadily, his chest rising under the hospital blanket. I took his hand again. You have no idea what they almost did to you, I whispered. But you will. And when you're strong enough, we'll deal with it together. In that moment, my mission changed. I wasn't just going to protect him. I was going to find out exactly why our parents had chosen to let him die. I started with the insurance papers. The ones my parents had refused to explain when I asked. The ones they'd filed quietly after my brother's accident, brushing me off with. We've got it handled. But now that he was stable, conscious, and slowly starting to speak again, I had time and motive. I visited the house while they were out. I still had a key. My father had forgotten to change the locks. A mistake. In the drawer beneath the old printer, I found it, a thick file labeled in my mother's handwriting. Life plus Medical Evan. My brother's name. Inside were documents I didn't want to believe. Life insurance policies signed 3 months before the crash. An accidental death, clause worth over $850,000. My parents listed as primary beneficiaries. No mention of Evan's name anywhere as a signer. Just theirs. The signatures were clean. Too clean. My stomach turned. I sat there, numb, trying to connect the pieces. My brother's accident, the one they always described vaguely, as if it were some unfortunate mystery, had happened late at night. He'd been driving their car. Their tires had been replaced days before, yet the brakes failed. He never remembered what happened. Just said the road curved, and then black. And now this. I snapped photos of every page with shaking hands. Then I slipped the file back exactly where I found it. That night, I sat beside Evan in his room. He was more alert now, pale but awake. I didn't say much. Just fed him sips of water and watched his eyes scan the ceiling like he was chasing thoughts he couldn't quite catch. Then he whispered, "Did they come?" I swallowed hard. They were here. Not for long. He blinked slowly. I heard them talking before I went under. Something about the house. The inheritance. I think they want me gone. I squeezed his hand. You're not going anywhere. And whatever they're hiding, I'm going to bring it into the light. Because now I knew this wasn't just betrayal. It was premeditated. And I was done playing the obedient daughter. The first thread I pulled was small. A quiet conversation with Aunt Valerie, over coffee in her sunlit kitchen, where I slid my phone across the table and let her scroll through the photos of the insurance papers. Her eyes darkened. This isn't just suspicious, this is criminal.
I leaned in.
If I go to the police, they'll bury it.
My parents know people.
They'll spin it. She sipped her coffee, thinking. Then, you don't start with the police. You start with the people they can't control. 2 days later, I reached out to a local investigative journalist, one who had built a reputation for dragging small-town corruption into the light. I didn't give my name at first. I just sent the documents, the timeline, the hospital incident. The reply came within an hour. Meet me. This needs to be told. Meanwhile, I played the role my parents expected, the dutiful daughter visiting the hospital, nodding politely when they dropped in, never letting them see the quiet war I was waging. But every time I looked at my brother, thinner than he'd ever been, I imagined them signing those papers, calculating his worth like a transaction. And it kept me steady. The journalist met me in the corner booth of a nearly empty diner. He brought a recorder, a notepad, and an expression that told me he'd already decided my story was real. By the end of the meeting, he had enough to start. But I gave him one more piece, the kicker. They tried to stop his surgery. If I hadn't stepped in, he'd be dead right now. His pen stopped mid-scribble. We'll lead with that. The plan was simple. Slow leaks. A whisper here, a fact there. Build the tension until the full story dropped. Let my parents feel the walls closing in without knowing where the cracks were coming from. The first article ran online a week later. Local family under scrutiny for alleged medical neglect. No names yet. Just enough detail for them to recognize themselves in every word. And when my mother called that night, her voice sharp, demanding to know if I had something to do with this, I let a smile curl across my lips before saying, I told you. I'm not letting him die. She hung up without a word. The second article dropped on a Thursday morning. This time, there were names. My parents' names. My brother's. Mine. The headline was colder than I expected. Insurance, neglect, and family betrayal inside the ICU decision that sparked outrage. The photo was of the hospital entrance, but the words inside were a scalpel. They cut through every layer of their carefully curated image. The respected churchgoers, the loving parents, the couple everyone trusted. By noon, their phones must have been on fire. I knew because mine was. Texts, voicemails. From them. From relatives. From neighbors I hadn't spoken to in years. Some were supportive. Others told me I'd destroyed the family. But I wasn't the one who signed those papers. That afternoon, I went to the hospital. My brother was stronger now, able to sit up, his voice still rough but steady. It's all over the news, he said. People are talking. I pulled a chair close. Good. Let them. We were mid-conversation when my parents walked in. Their faces were pale, tight, like they'd been carved from marble overnight. My mother didn't look at my brother. She went straight for me. You've humiliated us, she hissed. I stood.
No.
You humiliated yourselves when you chose money over your own son. My father tried to play peacemaker, his voice low, rehearsed. We can fix this, but you have to stop talking to the press. They'll ruin us. I stepped back so I could see them both, the people who raised me and the people who had tried to erase my brother. You're worried about being ruined? You should have thought about that before you tried to make him disappear. The room was silent except for the steady beeping of the heart monitor. My brother's eyes were on me, and in that moment, I knew he understood. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. You will never control this narrative again. Every step you take from now on, someone will be watching. My mother flinched, but didn't answer. My father's mouth opened, then closed. And for the first time, I saw it fear. Not of exposure.
Of me.
It didn't take long for the ripple to turn into a wave. By the end of the month, the third and final article hit. A deep dive, complete with the scanned insurance forms I'd photographed, the timeline of my brother's accident, and the doctor's confirmation that my parents had refused surgery until I intervened. There was no spinning it now. Their friends stopped answering their calls. The church asked them to step down from every committee. My father's consulting contracts evaporated one by one. The whispers became open conversations, and the people they once ruled over with charm and intimidation now crossed the street to avoid them. Financial ruin came next. Legal inquiries froze accounts. The payout they'd planned for was gone before it ever existed. The attorney fees alone were enough to choke them. And me? I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. My brother was home, propped up on the couch in my apartment, color back in his cheeks. He'd read every article. He knew every detail now. One evening, he looked at me over a plate of takeout and said, "They'll never forgive you." I smiled faintly. Good. I didn't do this for their forgiveness. Outside, the sky was painted in gold and violet. For the first time in months, the air didn't feel heavy. The war was over. A week later, I saw them for the last time. They were leaving the courthouse, surrounded by reporters, eyes down, clothes rumpled. I didn't approach. I just stood across the street with my brother beside me. They looked up once, long enough to see us together, alive and unbroken.
I didn't wave.
I didn't speak. I just let the silence between us do what it had always done, tell the truth. And this time, they were the ones frozen in disbelief.